what are your feelings about what staff can do? And I notice there's a number of staff within the room here today, but what can university staff do to help students with navigating the complex ways they're using World Englishes or Standard English in various ways? Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you. So I think just simply the first answer to that question is awareness. It's staff being aware that, as Alex has just described, when we see particular types of language use in especially the written work of our Chinese learners, that the features they see are not errors. They may diverge from what we understand as a standard English, but these features themselves are standard because they are replicated. They are common to very, very large numbers of people. It is a form of language. So to see, first of all, particular language features, and if you want to see examples, you'll have to buy the book. To see these features not as divergence from, as it were, a British or American English standard of English, but as evidence of a form of English with features in its own right, I think is the first step to understanding what comes next. I think what comes next, of course, is quite challenging because, as Alex says, it's not even that we can talk about perhaps, a China English or a Nigerian English. There may be these regional variations that are then replicated and replicated severally by large groups of people. So there is a challenge there. This is not an easy thing, but I think recognition and awareness is really the first step for staff to thinking about their own practice. Thanks.
I think something we really argue in our book is room. It's room that allows students to voice their knowledge, their skills, what they trying to bring or they can contribute to a different cultural environment or knowledge, how we will understand things differently. I think there's an approach, I suppose you need to buy our books, but really we're promoting a potential approach to enhance the awareness that Paul mentioned. It's a bottom-up approach because, for example, as Paul said about his experience, his manager asked him, how can we support international students? It's kindly top-down because we are thinking, we're trying to imagine what international students may need, what Chinese students may work, or what they may experience, what they like, what they want. But do we leave the room for us to understand what the students really need? Do we leave the room for students to really voice what they can bring, what they want? So if we can take all potential means, it could be official, formal, or some could be informal or even invisible things that we don't really conscious, but there still could be opportunities for us to understand our students, their cultural backgrounds, or their different needs, like Alex said, when you receive an email from Chinese students, could you take that as an opportunity to understand their cultural backgrounds, understand why they behave in that ways? So if there could be not just awareness, but also take that into the practice, apply that idea into your interactions with Chinese students or other international students as well. Take that opportunity to understand them more and think more, reflect more in your own practice. That could be something quite helpful as well.
Just not much to add to that. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ray. I think it's an opportunity just to engage more. And again, it doesn't have to be from linguistic perspective. There's lots of ways. I come at it from the linguistic side, obviously, because that's what I do. But there's ways that I think as lecturers, we're all collectively expected to engage with students to make sure everyone, home students and international, feel welcomed and integrated and so on. I once had a student who was homesick. And I said, well, where's home? She said, Cheshire. So, I mean, it's quite local, I would say, in comparison. But seriously speaking, they can feel out of sorts and homesick and needing to engage more. So one way we do this is we've had once, a time we got some tea and coffee put together and asked the Chinese students to just come. And we sat in a circle. It was very informal and just simply asked them what works, what does not work, what would you do differently? And it was the first time that I've seen some students who were quite quiet in class really open up. I mean, you couldn't stop them. You couldn't shut them up. And I mean that in a good way. It was good to see them engaging. And I think what they got out of it, the vibe I got was they were grateful that we gave them a chance to speak and to trust what they had to contribute. This is when the program was called MA Education International. I don't think it was they. Maybe in a few said, why do we call it Education International? That doesn't make sense in English, maybe French. International education. There was other things too. And they realized that they were going to see changes maybe after they'd already graduated. But they knew at least they could be responsible for some of the changes that were put forward in the program. So just listening. And again, the last thing I've learned is not to equate silence in class with lack of engagement, because a lot of the Chinese students, there's usually a few, 2 or 3, who will always talk, but there's some who will never say a word. Then again, I reflected on that today. In undergraduate work, I never said a word either. It wasn't cultural. It's because I was shy. I didn't want to speak. I was afraid, petrified if they called on me. So there's going to be lots of reasons. But they were still engaging by, thinking about what's been said, this silent engagement too. So I guess it goes back to the same point I made, just two-way learning. Next.
Thank you. Vivian, would you mind if I call on you directly as our international student on the panel? Is there anything you wish your lecturers or teachers had known or had done differently in your experience?
I had a very meaningful experience of interact with one of my professor, Stephen Jones. And after a lecture, I went over and talked to him about my ideas. And at the end, he shakes my hand and asks for my name. And I was like, wait, what's this? What's going on? I'm surprised. And he showed his respect. He respects me, and I was so surprised. And then that is like kind of the way that I adopt the idea of like, oh, we're equal, we're both people. It's not like at the top of the hierarchy, just like you mentioned. But I do think there, like for us, we need like ways to realize that the university staff treat us in such a way, they've seen us in such a way, but we don't know how. I think there is a gap here.